You wake up, you reach for coffee, then cereal or eggs or a protein bar eaten in the car. It feels automatic. It feels ancient, but it isn't. For most of human history, there was no such thing as breakfast. Your ancestors woke up hungry, and they stayed that way. Sometimes for hours, sometimes for most of the day. The real answer is far stranger than a missed meal. It's a clue about how your entire body was built to run. Think about your own mornings, the grogginess before food, the slight headache if breakfast is late, the irritability your family jokes about. You've probably been told this is low blood sugar. That's true, but it's not the whole story. Your body isn't malfunctioning without breakfast. It's remembering something it did every single day for nearly 200,000 years. Let's go back. Not to your grandparents, not even to farming villages. Back to small bands of hunter-gatherers, moving across the savannah, sleeping under open sky, waking with the sun. No pantry, no fridge, no guaranteed food. What did they eat first thing in the morning? Usually, nothing. Anthropologist Alyssa Crittenden has spent years living alongside the Hadza, one of the last hunter-gatherer societies on Earth, based in Tanzania. Her research shows something that surprises most people. The Hadza rarely eat right after waking. Food isn't sitting in a bowl waiting for them. It has to be found first. Roots have to be dug, berries have to be spotted, honey has to be located, often by following a wild bird called a honey guide, then extracted from a hive while risking stings. Meat has to be tracked, and tracking takes hours, sometimes an entire day, sometimes several. Breakfast in the modern sense simply wasn't an option. It wasn't a choice they made. It was a constraint written into the land itself. So the human body adapted, not to expect food immediately upon waking, but to function without it, to hunt without it, to think clearly without it. This is the part that surprises people most. Fasting in the morning doesn't just feel tolerable to your body. In many ways, it's what your body is optimized for. Here's where it gets interesting. Herman Poncer, an evolutionary anthropologist at Duke University, has spent years measuring the actual energy expenditure of hunter-gatherers like the Hadza. What he found challenged assumptions researchers had held for decades. Despite walking, digging, climbing, and carrying heavy loads all day, every day, Hadza energy expenditure wasn't dramatically higher than that of sedentary people in modern cities. Their bodies had become remarkably efficient at using stored fuel, efficient at running lean for long stretches without needing constant refueling.
Your body still carries that same design. Fat isn't just extra weight sitting on your body. It's a survival reserve, built by evolution for exactly this situation, hours or days without guaranteed food. When you skip breakfast today, your body doesn't panic. It reaches into a system that has existed in you since before agriculture, before pottery, before language as we know it. It switches fuel sources. It taps stored fat. It waits, patiently, the way it was built to. But if this is true, why does skipping breakfast feel hard for so many people now? Let's slow down here because this is where most explanations stop too early. It's not enough to say your body can handle skipping a meal. The deeper question is why your body was built this way in the first place. Why wouldn't evolution simply favor humans who ate the moment they woke if food happened to be available? The answer has to do with unpredictability. For nearly the entire span of human existence, food wasn't a guarantee. It was a gamble, renewed every single day. A hunt could fail, a storm could wash out a foraging route, an entire week could pass with lean meals and long gaps between them. Bodies that panicked, that shut down, that couldn't function without immediate fuel, didn't survive those gaps. Bodies that could think clearly on an empty stomach, track prey on an empty stomach, walk for miles on an empty stomach, did. Evolution isn't sentimental. It keeps what works and quietly discards what doesn't. Over hundreds of thousands of years, across thousands of generations, the trait that kept winning was resilience to hunger, not dependence on constant food. This is worth sitting with for a moment. The modern belief that breakfast is the most important meal of the day would have sounded strange, maybe even backwards, to the people who built your biology. To them, the ability to function without breakfast wasn't a health hack. It was baseline. It was Tuesday. Now, picture a typical morning for early humans, not as an abstraction, but as something lived. The sky lightens. There's no alarm, only the shift from dark to gray to gold. People begin to stir, not because a clock told them to, but because their internal rhythms, tuned over millennia to sunlight, nudged them awake. There's no smell of bacon, no boiling kettle. Instead, there's discussion. Where did the tracks lead yesterday? Which direction did the herd move? Is there a stand of fruiting trees not yet stripped bare? The first hours of the day weren't spent eating. They were spent deciding how to eat later. This is a crucial distinction your modern mind might miss.
In a hunter-gatherer world, breakfast wasn't skipped as an act of discipline. It was skipped because breakfast, as a concept, required food to already exist somewhere accessible. It didn't, not yet. Food was something the day produced, not something the day began with.
Compare that to your life now. Food surrounds you before you've done anything to earn it, hunt it, or find it. It's in the cupboard, it's in the fridge, it's a few taps away on a delivery app. This isn't a minor difference. It's a complete reversal of the relationship between effort and eating that shaped your species for nearly its entire existence. So why does breakfast feel so essential now? Why do so many people say they can't function without it? Partly, it's habit. Eat at the same time daily for years, and your body will predict food at that time, releasing hormones in anticipation. Skip it once, and those anticipatory signals feel like hunger, even if your actual energy reserves are fine. This is worth repeating because it's counterintuitive. The discomfort you feel from skipping breakfast isn't always your body running out of fuel. Often, it's your body expecting a routine you trained it to expect and reacting when that routine breaks. Partly, it's culture. Breakfast as we know it, a defined first meal eaten shortly after waking, only became widespread relatively recently, tied to factory schedules, standardized workdays, and food marketing in the 20th century. Before industrialization, meal timing across many societies was looser, shaped by seasons, by labor, by daylight, not by a fixed clock demanding food at 7 each morning. Cereal companies didn't just sell a product, they sold an idea that morning without food was a problem needing solved. Advertisements in the early and mid-20th century worked hard to convince entire populations that skipping the first meal of the day was dangerous, even irresponsible. It wasn't really about health, it was about selling boxes off shelves. But your biology never received that memo. Your biology still remembers foraging, still remembers uncertainty, still remembers running lean until food was found. Here's where the story of modern eating gets stranger still. Sachin Panda, a researcher at the Salk Institute who studies circadian biology, has spent years examining how meal timing interacts with your internal clock. His work shows that your body isn't just reacting to what you eat, it's reacting to when. Your liver, your gut, even your muscles run on roughly daily rhythms, expecting activity and food at certain windows and rest at others. Constant grazing, snacking through the day, eating late into the night, blurs signals that evolution never had to account for. Your ancestors didn't have refrigerators glowing at midnight. They had darkness, and darkness meant no food was coming until light returned. Modern life didn't just add breakfast, it added constant access, food anytime, anywhere, at any hour. And your body, still tuned to scarcity and rhythm, is left trying to interpret a world it was never designed for. Think about what a single modern day of eating can look like. Coffee before sunrise, a pastry an hour later, lunch at a desk while scrolling a phone, a snack at 3 because energy dips, dinner late after work, sometimes followed by something sweet in front of a screen at 10. Stack these hours together, and there might be almost no true gap left in the day. No extended stretch where your digestive system, your insulin levels, your metabolic machinery gets to fully rest and reset. Your ancestors' bodies knew long stretches of nothing, followed by bursts of eating when food appeared. Your modern day, for many people, knows almost the opposite. Near constant small inputs with barely a pause. This matters because your metabolism didn't evolve to handle constant input. It evolved to handle waves. Feast, then fast. Effort, then reward. Scarcity, then abundance. When those waves flatten into a single continuous hum of grazing, the internal systems built around contrast start losing their signal. Here's the twist most people don't expect. Some researchers now believe this ancient pattern, periods without food followed by periods of eating, might matter more for health than the specific foods eaten. Not because starving yourself is virtuous, it isn't, but because your metabolism appears built around cycles of scarcity and abundance, not constant, steady input. Give your body an occasional break from digestion, and ancient processes activate. Cellular repair increases. Fat becomes more accessible as fuel. Insulin, the hormone that tells your body to store energy, gets a chance to fall and reset instead of staying elevated all day. Consider what that actually means for the version of you standing in the kitchen right now. When you delay your first meal, even by a few hours, you're not depriving your body of something essential. You're returning it, briefly, to a state it spent nearly its entire evolutionary history in, a state of patient waiting,
A state where thinking sharply on an empty stomach wasn't unusual. It was required, because the empty stomach was the reason you had to go find food in the first place. None of this means breakfast is bad. It means breakfast was never mandatory. It was never the most natural meal, or the most important one, despite what an entire industry insisted for decades. It was one adaptation among many, layered onto a body built for something older and more flexible. And this flexibility runs deeper than meal timing alone. It shows up in how your body handles stress, how it regulates temperature, how it responds to physical exertion after a night of little sleep. Across nearly every system, your biology carries the same underlying design principle. Built for variability, built for gaps, built for uncertainty, not for the smooth, scheduled predictability of modern routines.
Think about that the next time your stomach growls at 9 in the morning and you feel like something is wrong. Nothing is wrong. Your body is doing exactly what it has always done. Waiting, conserving, ready to run, think, and move on stored reserves. The same way it did for hundreds of thousands of mornings before anyone invented cereal or coffee or the very concept of a scheduled first meal. There's something almost humbling in this. An entire modern industry, breakfast cereal, energy bars, drive-through breakfast sandwiches, was built on convincing you that your own body was fragile without immediate morning fuel. And your body, quietly, quite literally in your gut and your cells, was built to prove otherwise. Somewhere in your body, a very old system is still running. It doesn't know about clocks or offices or breakfast menus. It only knows daylight and effort, and the occasional, patient wait for food that hasn't arrived yet. That system built the humans who outran, outlasted, and outsurvived nearly every hardship this planet threw at them. And it's still inside you right now, quietly unbothered by an empty stomach, still trusting the same ancient plan. Let's push this further, because breakfast is only the most visible piece of a much bigger pattern. Your ancestors didn't just skip an occasional morning meal. Their entire relationship with food ran in cycles that modern life has almost completely erased. Consider the seasons. A hunter-gatherer's autumn might have meant abundance, fruit ripening, animals fattened before winter, food stores briefly overflowing. Late winter or early spring, by contrast, could mean scarcity stretched across weeks, not hours. Bodies evolved to handle both extremes, not because scarcity was pleasant, but because it was inevitable. A body that could only function during abundance would have died out the first hard winter. A body that thrived during both, storing efficiently when food was plentiful and conserving efficiently when it wasn't, survived to pass that same flexibility forward. You are the product of that flexibility. Every cell in your body carries instructions shaped by ancestors who faced years of plenty and years of hardship, sometimes within the same decade, sometimes within the same season. Your body doesn't expect uniformity, it expects rhythm, and within that rhythm, contrast. This is part of why modern eating patterns can feel oddly exhausting, even when there's no shortage of food anywhere in sight. Constant abundance without contrast is, in its own way, unfamiliar territory for a body built on alternating feast and famine. Never truly hungry, never truly full, never given a clear signal of scarcity or abundance, just a flat, continuous stream of moderate intake. It's a pattern your biology has almost no evolutionary precedent for.
Now let's turn to something else the Hadza research reveals, something that goes beyond meal timing into how food itself was earned. Crittenden's fieldwork shows that food acquisition among hunter-gatherers wasn't a solitary task performed by one person filling one plate. It was deeply social. Foraging often happened in groups. Meat from a successful hunt was shared widely across a camp, not hoarded by whoever made the kill. Children learned to forage by tagging along with adults, slowly building skill over years, often contributing meaningfully to their own nutrition by around middle childhood, far earlier than most people today would expect. This changes the picture even further. Food wasn't just delayed each morning, it was collaborative, effortful, and unevenly distributed across the day, arriving in waves shaped by the success or failure of the group's combined effort, not by a clock on a kitchen wall. Some days brought a large kill and a feast that stretched into the evening. Other days brought only roots and berries, eaten in smaller amounts, spread thin. Your body's expectation of food was never built around a guaranteed 3 meals. It was built around variability, shaped by weather, luck, skill, and season. Now think about what this means for hunger itself.
Hunger in this ancestral context wasn't simply a discomfort to eliminate as quickly as possible. It was information. It signaled that effort was needed. It sharpened focus, heightened attention, and in many documented cases, improved certain kinds of cognitive performance, at least for a limited window. Some researchers studying fasting physiology today point to this as a plausible explanation for why mild, short-term hunger doesn't necessarily impair thinking the way people assume. Your ancestors couldn't afford to become mentally foggy the moment their stomach was empty. Foggy thinking on an empty stomach, in a world where the empty stomach demanded a successful hunt or a good foraging day to fix, would have been a serious disadvantage. Sharp thinking on an empty stomach was the far more useful trait, and useful traits tend to persist. This reframes something you've probably experienced without ever putting language to it. That period mid-morning, before lunch, when you're a little hungry but not yet uncomfortable, when your mind sometimes feels unexpectedly clear and focused, that isn't a fluke. That's an old, familiar state your biology recognizes, even if your modern schedule rarely gives it room to show up.
Of course, none of this means modern breakfast habits are wrong, or that everyone should abandon their morning meal immediately. Bodies vary. Health conditions vary. Some people manage blood sugar differently. Some have higher activity demands early in the day. Some simply feel and perform better with food soon after waking. Evolutionary history explains tendencies and defaults, not universal rules for every individual in every circumstance. What it does offer is context, a reason to question the assumption that skipping breakfast is inherently harmful, or that eating immediately upon waking is somehow the single correct way for a human body to start its day. Here's another layer worth sitting with. The very framing of breakfast as the most important meal of the day is a remarkably recent claim, historically speaking, and its popularity says more about advertising success than about biological necessity. For the overwhelming majority of the time modern humans have existed, no one made that claim at all. Not because ancient people lacked the concept of importance, but because meals in general weren't organized around fixed daily rituals the way they are now. Meals happened when food was available and when the body's signals and social context aligned. The idea of a required, specific, named first meal eaten at a specific time, containing specific culturally sanctioned foods like cereal or eggs, is a structure layered onto biology, not a discovery drawn from it. This is the twist worth carrying with you. So much of what feels like an unquestionable biological need is, on closer inspection, a fairly young cultural habit dressed up to look ancient. Meanwhile, the things that actually are ancient, like your body's comfort with morning hunger, like its ability to think clearly before eating, like its preference for contrast over constant steady input, often go unnoticed, mistaken for problems rather than recognized as design. Think about that the next time your stomach growls at 9 in the morning and you feel like something is wrong. Nothing is wrong. Your body is doing exactly what it has always done, waiting, conserving, ready to run, think, and move on stored reserves, the same way it did for hundreds of thousands of mornings before anyone invented cereal or coffee or the very concept of a scheduled first meal. There's something almost humbling in this. An entire modern industry, breakfast cereal, energy bars, drive-through breakfast sandwiches, was built on convincing you that your own body was fragile without immediate morning fuel, and your body, quietly, quite literally in your gut and your cells, was built to prove otherwise.
Somewhere in your body, a very old system is still running. It doesn't know about clocks or offices or breakfast menus. It only knows daylight and effort, and the occasional patient wait for food that hasn't arrived yet. That system built the humans who outran, outlasted, and outsurvived nearly every hardship this planet threw at them. And it's still inside you right now, quietly unbothered by an empty stomach, still trusting the same ancient plan. You reach for coffee in the morning, thinking you're feeding a broken system. You're not. You're overriding a perfectly working one, built across 200,000 years for a body that never once needed breakfast to survive the morning.